following up on Bill Barnwell's article, he said that the Cam Jordan extension was the worst move the Saints made in the last 5 years. Do you guys agree?
I don't. Do you have a strong opinion? Look, I mean, not a great extension, and maybe Cam should have been making half that much money. I mean, he's still good for the locker room. I don't think they should have necessarily cut him. They should have paid him about half that much money. That would have saved him, $12 million or something? Sure. Save $12 million. That would have helped. I'm looking at the draft. I mean, I guess the Marcus Davenport pick doesn't count because that was 6 years ago now. Where they used 2 first-round picks, but they didn't have a first-round pick in 2019 because of it. And then the big one for me is that massive trade they made to acquire the 2 first-round picks and then trade up again and get Olave. The second one ended up being Trevor Penning. Don't have a first-round pick the next year because of it. They just used so much draft capital to get 2 guys that year, and one of them was a big miss. That's by far number 1 for me.
I think my by far number 1 is letting Trey Hendrickson go. Like, it's the NFL sack leader every single year. That's by far. That's like far and away. That's a franchise changing move, and now you're kind of like chasing your tail on it still to this point, which leads into, the Cam Jordan needing to keep him and all this stuff like that. That's a massive miss for me. I don't even know if I would put yours on the list. I don't know if anything else even really comes like super close to that. That feels like just like a total miscalculation.
The Penning pick for me, going that high and then striking out with an unproven unknown. I know it's the draft, so like a lot of people are unknown. You never know how they're going to be in the league, but going that high for a guy from a small school, nah, bro.
Well, the thing that bothers me about it, I don't mind missing on Trevor Penning. If they had just kept their pick, they would have the 18th pick that year. They probably, might have taken Trevor Penning with that pick. You miss it. We're putting it on the list. Like missing on Peyton Turner is on the list, but. The thing I don't like is there were years where the Saints were, the Saints had the most talented roster in the league. Like people would do these surveys and say the most talent in the league is in New Orleans. And you could write 46 names in pen on your roster and you knew they were going to make the team. There were a lot of years like that where I'd be like, all right, I don't mind trading up in the draft to get one more piece that really fits because you don't need 10 new rookies this year, whatever. But this is a Saints team that has just been getting older, falling apart. The foundation's been cracking. You've been seeing that. And to just like turn 5 good draft picks into 2 or 3 is just, that's even more costly than missing on Trevor Penning himself. They've become a team that needs to have 6 lottery tickets, so you hope 2 or 3 of them hit. You can't put all your eggs in one basket when you need to rebuild every position on the roster.
Another one to me too, kind of following along the same thread of the Hendrickson one is Zach Bond. You draft him in the 3rd. You don't really find a position for him. It doesn't really work out kind of as quickly as you hope. The next year you have to draft another linebacker in the 2nd round. You don't keep Bond. He leaves. He goes somewhere else. You pay Pete Warren. Like, it just kind of feels like if you had gotten that right, you have another asset that you could have used somewhere else to kind of build out your depth. I think maybe one of the biggest criticisms of DA is maybe the misevaluation of the talent under his own roof is really kind of something that there's a thread there on some of these guys and just kind of missing on them and not seeing it. I mean, that's kind of a knock on him right there.
Don't know what you got until it's gone.
Well, he never knew what he had in like really any of those guys. And I mean, I would say, just in all fairness, I feel like as I look back at it, like that's kind of the thing where it's like, and that's where like the big harm comes is when you're kind of missing on all that stuff. And, even going to Hendrickson, like, are you drafting Foskey then in the 2nd because you have this guy? Yeah. I mean, it's just kind of, if you had known what he was and believed in it and he showed you, I think it kind of changes the course of your whole D line.
Butterfly effect. Another one that I thought about just now too was, since it's 5 years, he's not Hall of Fame eligible yet. The lack of carrying out a succession plan post Drew Brees at quarterback, kind of sort of. I think that's kind of a fumble in a sort of sense. I know it's supposed to be Jameis, then he got hurt, then Andy Dalton, and then it just all kind of fell apart and then came back together a little bit from there. But there was no clear, like Taysom was still thinking he was it was just a lot of weird stuff right there that I think we'll put on that list also.
Yeah, it's a little easier said than done where they were picking. Obviously Mahomes would have fixed everything, but there aren't a ton of names of guys they should have been picking in the teens and 20s that would have obviously solved that. But
people are going to start screaming at their TV, like Lamar. Like there's guys. There's guys they could have took in those ranges that have became successful players. To be fair, and
Yeah,
you know
of course.
the Ravens are one of them. They had Flacco, and they made the move to Lamar. Like
Yep.
good teams do it. Like I know everyone says it's hard, but good teams find a way to do it. The Packers have done it twice now because that's just become a priority to them. So
Yeah.
you know, Kansas City did it. Alex Smith was still good. Baltimore did it.
No question.
They had the vision for it. They just never, you know, they let it go. But they got good. Like that was probably the thing that kind of stopped it, is that they got good and they got close. And what are you gonna do? You know, if you get to 17 and it's like, well, we're gonna try to replace Drew with this guy at pick 10, and then all of a sudden you become like a freak play away from making the Super Bowl, and then do you prioritize Station B or you know, do you keep trying to get do you try to go for the trophy while your window's there? And I think that probably kind of knocks it off at the end of that path there. And now as we're sitting here today, it's easy to say, well, like they should have done that instead of Davenport, but like you felt like you were a D end away from winning a Super Bowl. And like it is the wrong pick, and there is all the hindsight analysis, but it's hard for me to kind of fault the motive of their moves at that point. And again, I was Mr. like killing them for not having the Breeze plan when everyone was killing me for saying that they should have a Breeze plan. Starting in 14, you need to draft one. 15, draft one. Why would you do that? It's a wasted pick. That doesn't help. Da-da-da. And like I was getting like, you know, killed for
sniped,
it.
yeah.
Like I was saying when it wasn't popular. So like I'm not sitting here saying this like to give Sean, Mickey, Jeff, Ireland a pass. Like I think once 17 happened, it becomes very hard for me to sit here and kind of be like, no, 18, 19, 20, like this is what you should have been. By 20, you should have been back into it. But like
For
18,
sure.
19, like being all money in on trying to win, you know, the Super Bowl, like it's hard for me to say that was the wrong course of action.